Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining our project launch, the Active Climate Change Citizenships for a Just Transition in South Africa. We are very excited that you're able to join us this morning. And my name is Mary Fawkes Fairweather. I will be your host for this morning. And we will shortly be going through the program of events. I am the project manager for this EU CCC Climate Change Champions, as we call it, project. And before I kick off, I would just like to cover a few house rules. As you can see, we are recording the session. We will also not be having a comfort break, as we've managed to set it into about an hour session for you. And then in terms of your mute, please keep yourself on mute for the session. However, we will have a Q&A session later on, and you're more than welcome to raise your hand and ask the relevant questions. There's also another way for asking questions. We will have the chat box. So please pop your questions in there and we will endeavor to answer them during the sessions. If we do not, however, we will get back to you via email. So over to our program today. I will shortly be welcoming our CEO, Mike Mulcahy from the GreenCape, to do our official welcome. We will then be having the Dr. Ray Bernard from the EU, who will be saying a few words on behalf of them. My colleague Lindy Johnson will then take us through our project overview. And then following that, very excitingly, we'll be having a fireside chat with Aman Babulal and Ayaka Melitafa. So we're looking forward to hosting you this morning, and it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Mike.
Thanks very much, Mary. And thank you very much for having me to speak here today. GreenCape is a not-for-profit organization based in Cape Town. GreenCape has had a big focus on unlocking and unblocking opportunities in the green economy. We work to understand what aspects of the green economy are inherently economically viable in the South African context, and then work to remove barriers to allow these projects to flourish. We're pretty proud to say that over the last 10 years, that I think underpinned. Thanks. There are three kind of mega trends that we've seen globally that underpin the launch of today's project. I think the first of these has been COVID-19. COVID has changed the way that we interact, the way that we engage, and the way that we understand the economy and its opportunities. COVID is also the first sort of species level challenge we've had to face. And there's been some remarkable ingenuity and effort that's been applied to solving the COVID problem. The second big trend is this incredible drive towards the green economy. With COP26 in a few days' time and considerable commitments already made and much more anticipated to come out of the COP, the world is already moving towards green economy solutions. The focus of the green economy today is much more around managing the transition rather than justifying why a transition needs to happen. The third kind of major trend has been something that links these first two together. There's a new sense of needing partners and partnerships. This has been seen through COVID and through managing a just transition. We've seen a bunch of occasions where these partnerships have worked incredibly well, and also occasions where sort of nationalist identity trumps this imperative to partner, and this can set back progress. GreenCape is thrilled to partner with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom on this project. The FNF has been a partner and supporter of GreenCape for many years, and what we hope to achieve in this project is really an expression of this multi-year collaboration that we've had. To wrap up the welcome, I wanted to sketch the picture and context for this project in particular. South Africa has some stunning natural resources, minerals, gold, coal, platinum, but we also have world-class wind and sun as another blessing. With this massive rollout of renewable energy opportunities planned in the integrated resource plan, and even more ambitious opportunities that have been spoken about in a hydrogen future, the green economy will be creating the jobs of the future. Many of these jobs didn't exist 15 years ago in South Africa. Imagining a job maintaining a wind turbine, or flying a drone to look for hotspots on a PV array, or running a global load control center for multiple projects across the world from Cape Town would have sounded really far-fetched 15 years ago, but all these jobs exist today. Jobs in welding, fitting, boiler making, electricians, and working with power are the sorts of skills that are desperately needed in factories that will be producing the components for renewable energy and the green economy. And this is an opportunity to build a future. Finally, we're also extremely grateful to the EU Commission. They've been another strong collaborator and partner in many areas of the green economy. and for the support of this project focusing on climate change champions. Thanks very much. Back to you, Mary.
Thanks very much, Mike. And now it gives me great pleasure, as Mike mentioned, the EU is our co-funder, and we will now be hearing from Dr. Ray Bernard, the Minister Councillor and Head of Cooperation at the EU delegation.
Yes, good morning. It seems that I'm appearing under Lydia, that many of you know, but I'm very happy to be here with you today. You know, the partnership between the European Union and South Africa since 1994 really built on our shared values and common interests. And climate change today is a common value and common interest. And we are mobilizing our strong ties to focus on enabling this just and green recovery together with our South African partners. And the project we are launching today, the Active Climate Change Citizenship for a Just Transition, is one of 5 projects under the Climate Change Champions call for proposal that we launched. And we launched it at a very particular moment. We launched it in December 2019, just 2 days after the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, launched the European Green Deal. And many people talked of the European Green Deal. It's a commitment by the EU to become the first economy to achieve a zero net greenhouse gas emission by 2050. But it's a growth strategy to respond to the challenges of climate change and decoupling growth, economic growth, from resource use. But this transition, and the President said it, must work for all, or it will not work at all. And the international dimension of the Green Deal aims to support our partners in this effort to combat climate change. And the EU has committed in that line to dedicate at least 30%, 30, of this total investment in our international partnerships during the next 7 years to climate change. It was 20% in the last 7 years as a commitment. It was up by 10 points. So this, it must work for all, is really meaning for every country and every person to accompany that change. So some of you participating today may have joined a number of activities organized with our member states or by the member states themselves to support and facilitate the just transition. I want to stress that we are indeed taking a Team Europe approach to have this greater impact. We worked in close collaboration as Europe, the EU, the European Commission, the member states, driving into the same direction. And together with GreenCape, we are looking at ensuring this just transition, particularly through alternatives for those regions that are more dependent on the coal economy, and to enable the local communities to make the most of these opportunities unlocked by the new renewable energy initiatives. With other EU partners, we are looking at increasing energy efficiency in public buildings, improving water management, enabling sustainable funding, improving adaptation responses, but many other opportunities as well. Through coming to the call for proposal, we were very happy by the response. We had very happy and very disappointed we could not finance all of them. We had 58 applications and 5 projects were selected. Congratulations to GreenCape and FNF to be one of the winning 5 projects, one of the best 5s. But it really shows the success of this call of proposal, how dynamic the civil society is on the energy transition in South Africa and the response to the climate change challenges. It's also the potential to enhance gender equality, participation of the youth, innovative approaches and technologies. So really, bravo again. These days, few days before COP26, all these 5 projects from the Climate Change Champions Call represent a key contribution of the European Union to contribute to South Africa NDC on mitigation and adaptation under the Paris Agreement. And I am personally really looking forward to hearing from you, to visiting you, to see our joint achievements under this project. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard. And yes, as GreenCape, we are very excited that we were granted this project and the opportunity for us to roll it out over the next few years. My colleague Lindiwe Johnson will now be joining me, and we will be taking you through a project overview. So as has been mentioned by Mike and Dr. Bernard, we, with this active climate change citizenship for a just transition in South Africa project, basically from our side, we with the project are aiming to instill an active response that can bring about opportunities for the communities and the economy in creating awareness and capacitating the youth, their local economies, as well as local authorities to really make a difference on the ground, which for us is incredibly important. And Lindy will now be taking you through the communities that we are working with and a little bit more of the project activities and outputs. Thank you, Lindy.
Thank you, Mary. The focus is on urban and rural communities, women and youth in the Northern, Eastern and Western Cape. These are the communities and citizens that stand to benefit from the transition to cleaner and more sustainable energy, but whose voices are not currently adequately heard at national level and at local level, and who may lack the knowledge and capacity and the sense of urgency to act locally. That is fundamentally what the project is about, building a sense of agency and enabling proactive, constructive, and collaborative engagements with communities. As I mentioned, women and youth with this is a specific focus. The project objective is to empower communities, especially women and youth, to be knowledgeable. Oh, Nick, you can actually change that to the next slide. Thank you. The project objective is to empower communities, especially women and youth, to be knowledgeable about climate change and renewable energy, to take an active role in the policy and decision-making process at local and national level. And lastly, to work proactively and collaboratively on the ground to shape and contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation projects. So for the activities for the specific project, we will be working with various target beneficiaries. The project activities for our local authorities are to host capacity building workshops that will assist officials to see the potential of renewable energy to drive economic inclusion and highlight the best practice examples for climate change adaptation. Local authorities also have a strong influence in creating an enabling environment for active citizens, and thus creating spaces where the youth can engage with local authorities is going to be imperative. Through the process, we will also be appointing our partnering civil society organizations and community-based organizations who will go through capacity building workshops to become our program's train the trainers. Our partners are then to raise awareness and provide educational workshops on the energy landscape in South Africa and climate change adaptation measures to our targeted communities in the 3 provinces and our high school teachers. At a community level, the focus is on climate adaptation, which will include educational and climate change awareness competitions to lead to a proactive engaged community members who are able to collaborate on adaptation projects that have climate, social, and economic benefits for their communities. And then lastly, by working with teachers, the aim is really to reach about 500 high school students so that they are aware of the economic, environmental, and social benefits of renewable energy and career opportunities available to them through the creation of climate change clubs and virtual networking platforms, which will be driven by these clubs. The intent is to build a community of young people that have a voice to influence national and local climate and energy policy, and who take action at their schools and in their communities on climate mitigation and adaptation. This will empower and enable the youth to be climate change advocates. The voice of South African youth matters in the climate policy and decision-making conversation. And the intent is to build a community of youth, of young South Africans who find their voice to meaningfully engage with energy policy, to communicate the vision of the future, and who take action at their schools. We also have identified clear barriers for the project. And these are that communities are not always informed or engaged in national policy, energy policy discussions. The threat of climate change is also not a priority. Neither are our communities able to identify, or even some of our civil society organizations and community-based organizations able to identify the opportunities that exist within the space. And then, as I mentioned before, the youth also do not have access to the information that they need to be able to articulate their vision for a sustainable future, nor have they been empowered to become active citizens and engage government. These are some of the critical barriers that we've identified. However, we really hope that, and this is the main objective and the main outcome of the project, is that communities in the Western, Eastern, and Northern Cape, with a particular focus on women and youth, are capacitated and able to actively engage in democratic processes to influence government with regards to climate mitigation and adaptation with a particular focus on energy. Thank you, Mary. Actually, right now we are going to open the floor for a couple of questions. And yeah, we will drive those right now.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. So if there are no questions from the floor, we can continue on, but feel free to also contact Lindy and I after the session. We will be sharing our contact details if you have any questions. Right, well, so we will be moving on to our next item on our agenda. And I'm really looking forward to the next item, which is the fireside chat with Armand Babulal, and he will be chatting to Ayaka Melitafa about youth and climate change citizenship. Over to you, Armand.
Great. Can everyone see me and hear me? And is Ayaka on the call as well?
You're coming across loud and clear, Aman. We'll just get Ayaka on.
Okay, all right, great. So thanks so much for the introduction, Mary. As you mentioned, my name is Aman Babulal. I'll be moderating the next item on the agenda, that is the fireside chat on youth and climate change citizenship. In terms of the session, I'll be chatting to Ayaka for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll perhaps open the floor to questions. If I had to describe, the project that we're discussing today, if I had to summarize it in a single word, it would be engagement. So I know there were no questions for Lindy's section of the agenda, but I encourage you to please send through your questions and really use this opportunity to engage. So it's not just us talking at you. In terms of who I am, I'm a young professional that's explored the energy and climate space within the context of management consulting, working for a nonprofit, and now I currently work for a smart energy tech startup. When I'm not trying to work on the country's energy problems, I contribute towards Politically Aware. That's AWEH. That's an edutainment YouTube channel that uses satire to teach young people about the issues of the day, including energy and climate issues. In terms of Ayaka, perhaps she needs no introduction, but I'll do one anyway. Ayaka Melatafa is the founder of the Ayaka Melatafa Foundation. She's a well-known youth climate activist, currently working as an intern at the Alternative Information and Development Center. She's the youngest commissioner for the Presidential Climate Change Committee and a board member at Future Stories Alliance. She's also a recruitment official at the African Climate Alliance, a youth-led climate advocacy group that organized the climate strike protests in Cape Town, and that was in solidarity with more than 1 million youths around the world. And if that's not enough, because there's more to this, she's also a recipient of the Charlotte Manya Mantlake's Institute's Women Are Firsts Award and has been nominated as one of South Africa's most powerful women by the Mail and Guardian in 2020. So Ayaka, I guess my first question is, I'm assuming this is your abbreviated bio.
Yes, actually it is. It is.
Oh wow, are you serious? I was just joking, but I'm actually I'm not surprised. I think to start us off, one thing I didn't mention was your age, and it's very rude to ask a woman her age. So I'm not going to ask. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to yield the floor to you and hope that you volunteer that information just to kick us off.
Yes, I am 19 years old.
19 years old. Okay, that's 19 for those listening at home. I'm going to let that sit for a bit, allow the people on the call to reflect on what they've done with their lives. Okay, great. Now that we're all, I think, sufficiently insecure, I think we can move on to the rest of the interview. Firstly, Ayaka, thanks so much for joining us. I think this is the second time we've done this. A few years ago, as part of a youth climate roundtable, we also had a chat. That was great, and I'm sure this will be just as fun. And I think the best place to start is obviously at the beginning. So why don't you tell us about what sparked your interest in climate change?
My interest in climate change was sparked a couple of years ago when here in the Western Cape we were experiencing the water crisis, and it was just everywhere that day zero is approaching. First major city in South Africa to be experiencing this kind of drought, and it was like, I saw how much media was around it, but it really hit me when I was starting to go through it, when the water cuts were coming, where families had to like restrict themselves to 50 liters of water a day. And when you live in like lower class backgrounds or like lower class communities, you see that it's actually way less than 50 liters. And you see that a lot of people live in one household and then they're forced to share that amount. I saw in my community how people were getting sick from drinking the tap water since it was unpure, and we just couldn't afford to buy the bottled water from stores. And even boiling water was quite a process because electricity. And it really got, it hit home when the drought started affecting my mom. My mom was a small scale farmer at the time, and business was doing quite well. And then the drought came, and then we were struggling to water our vegetables, watering our crops. And I saw how much my mom was suffering when we saw cows dying because they didn't really have adequate water to drink. So that really hit home, and it pushed me to ask questions, to really interrogate what's happening in the situation and really try to get to the bottom of what was causing that water crisis that was affecting a nation so much, or basically the Western Cape so much.
I think that's amazing. Something I think a lot of us in the Western Cape, that period of the drought definitely resonates in the sense that it all definitely changed our thinking in some way and stoked that curiosity. And what did you do to satisfy that curiosity from your side, and what did you end up learning?
What I did, luckily, since I was a student or a learner at the Center of Science and Technology, we had access to the internet. So I was able to actually do some research, go to the library, really conduct research on the water crisis that we were facing. And I came into contact with these big terms like climate change, global warming, all of the information on the internet confirming that, yes, you're going to die, climate change is coming, biodiversity is dying. And it was so overwhelming at the time. And I was like, if this is really an emergency as how it seemed, why aren't people doing anything about it? What does this mean for South Africa? What does this mean for the world? And that really, really pushed me to try and like get people talking about the conversation, but I'd normally get shut down because people are like, what the hell, why are you focusing on the environment? That's a white people's problem, or that's like first world country people's issues because they don't have anything else to care about. And I was like, who can I talk to? And then that really made me climate anxious. It got me to a place where I was climate depressed. I really didn't know how to articulate this issue. I didn't know who to speak about. There was such a disconnect between the environmental struggle and people of color. So for me, that gave me like a boost, like I need to do something, but I really just didn't know how to.
If I can just pull one part of that answer, I mean, when you were asked that question by your friends, this is the white people's problem. What was your response to that?
At that time, I didn't have much information on the issue and climate change, so I couldn't find the links to climate change and like our struggles in the community as it was. So it was very hard for me to link climate change to like issues like poverty or issues like violence in the community. But luckily, through joining Project 90 by 2030, which is an environmental organization under the ULID initiative that really inspires young kids to take action in the community and learn about climate change, but not only climate problems, the solutions to climate change as well, and how we as young kids can articulate it in our community. That really gave me the confidence to speak about climate change. I started finding intersections between poverty and climate change. I started finding intersections between poverty, climate change, gender-based violence, xenophobia, even because of climate refugees. And that really gave me the opportunity to, when I speak to my peers, I can engage with them in a conversation and articulate that, no, the reason why you specifically should care about climate change is because you'll be more affected than people in the global north that you're talking about. The people that you're saying this is a white person's problem, they won't really face it at the same magnitude as you because you're already facing other socioeconomic problems as it is. So that way was a way for me to start engaging in conversations with people my age and getting them to understand really the urgency of this matter and why it's so important and crucial for young people to actually start participating in those conversations and asking these hard questions and holding our leaders accountable.
Awesome. Thanks for adding some color to that. I mean, many people on this call might not be familiar with you. Could you share an example or two of how you've used this knowledge of systems to bring about positive change in South Africa? You've mentioned a couple, but is there anything else you'd like to highlight?
Yes, through my journey in activism, I got more confidence. I started articulating more. I started speaking on newspapers, on radio stations, and I got the privilege to join the African Climate Alliance, which is the youth advocacy group that protests against climate inactivity here in South Africa. And that really just gave me the ability to speak at protests. And through that, I got the opportunity to be invited to multiple platforms, including the World Economic Forum. And I attended the World Economic Forum with the intent of keeping world leaders accountable for their actions, and really highlighted, it really put in perspective to me how much world leaders are willing to do about climate change and how much they're willing not to do about climate change. It really put in perspective to me that I have to learn as a South African citizen. I have to learn about my past. I have to learn about our circumstances, and I have to learn about why we are in the place that we're in. And me, through engaging in that, I was able to ask world leaders these complex questions of why aren't you addressing the climate urgency, and why aren't you doing enough to address the climate emergency in South Africa? And I got the opportunity to ask those questions directly to our president, Mr. Ramaphosa, and that really headwayed him or steered him in the direction of including me in the Presidential Climate Commission, so that we can be part of the conversation in moving South Africa in the direction of 100% renewable energy through a just transition. So we're currently engaging in that process, and it's quite tedious and it needs a lot of work, but I'm ensuring and I'm trying to make sure that the youth voice is heard, the youth voice is put to account, and that they understand the urgency of this matter, and they can't really use words like we don't have money or stuff like that in order for them to like not uphold their promises to the young kids. So it's basically me putting these people to account on the promises they made and their responsibilities as leaders in the South African perspective.
That's really fantastic that you've managed to get to that level of influence. You mentioned that when you were at the World Economic Forum, you had some insight into what world leaders were willing to do and what they were not willing to do. Do you care to elaborate on that?
When I went to the World Economic Forum, I was very radical, and I was like, this is what needs to happen. World leaders need to hear us and they need to act immediately. But when I was speaking at panels, engaging with these world leaders directly, I could see that they wanted to change. They understood our struggle. They understood that really this would be affecting our future. But then the reason that they didn't act or they couldn't act is because they have hired people that have opinions over them. So that power dynamic struggle where people want to make change, but they have to be held accountable to their bosses as well, really put it into perspective that climate change is not just an environmental issue. It's not even just a social justice issue. It's a political issue. It's an economic issue, and it's quite big. And we really need to start paying attention to those things and start understanding why people aren't making change in order for us to actually put solutions in place, or start telling them that we can't use the fact that it's difficult to not actually move in the right direction. We can't really put off these difficult decisions and expect the young kids to save us. We need to start being active in these conversations, and we need the older generation to start supporting us in what we're doing and equip us with the resources and information, so that when we go to these conferences and we speak to these big people, we actually have concrete steps that they can take to make sure that they adequately address the climate crisis, even if it will be against their company's morals or their leaders' morals. It's because it's something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done urgently.
100%. And since then, I'm not sure how long ago this World Economic Forum visit took place. Do you feel like that change is happening?
It's happening, but very slowly, very slowly. And that's something that we need to change. That's something that we still need to hammer into our society, that people can say, yes, we've done this and that, but that's not enough. I understand that on an individual level, it's good for a person to not use single-use plastics, to actually not buy these kind of things from commercialized brands. But we need to understand that if we don't all come together as a collective and speak on the issue of climate change and hold our leaders accountable, we will not reach our target, which is lowering the atmospheric temperature of 1.5 degrees, or keeping it under 1.5 degrees. Because if 2030 comes and we are still increasing in temperature, we'll see a lot more natural disasters caused by climate change. We'll become more food insecure, and basically our economies will start going downhill as well. So moving to a just transition can do nothing but benefit our society, our economy, and definitely future generations to come.
I think that's a great segue into you being a signatory on quite a landmark document that was presented at the UN General Assembly. Do you care to share more about that document?
Well, it's quite an intensive court case, but for me to put it simply in words that anyone can understand, it's basically the kids of the world taking the world to court for not upholding the United Nations rights of the child, which basically states that countries are responsible for making sure that kids are protected. And if these nations or these countries don't adequately address the climate crisis, it means that they are not listening to our rights. They're basically saying whatever to them, because the climate crisis will not only affect our human rights, but it will affect everything that around us. It will affect the way we get jobs. It will affect the way that we live our lives. It will affect everything around us. So the reason why I signed on my name to that petition is because I understood that we need representatives from different parts of the world, especially the global south, as we are the ones that will get the most affected by climate change. So we recently just got a ruling from the Committee of the Rights of the Child on whether the court case can be admissible or inadmissible. And the ruling was that it's inadmissible on the technical terms, that we as the kids that are taking these countries to court, we didn't go through the processes of choice, first going to the local courts, the national courts. We just went to the international courts and to try and get this landmark complaint addressed. And that was quite frustrating to see that they acknowledge that, yes, the emissions of these countries are directly affecting us as kids, but they can't act on it because we didn't go the technical way, or we didn't go the way that we were supposed to, even though our lawyers made the statements that we don't have enough time. If we went through those tedious processes, it would have been delayed by years and years on end. And it's very urgent that we address the climate crisis now and we hold world leaders accountable now. But that definitely just gave me the power and the confidence to just continue in my journey about fighting for the climate, and also just making sure that the young people's voices are heard in this space. So that definitely did not cripple me. It just motivated me to work even harder.
I mean, that's obviously disappointing, but I'm glad to see that you've taken it in your stride like that. By any chance, have they appealed that ruling, or are you going to go through the normal court process as requested, or what is the reaction been?
I'm definitely hoping that we will be appealing the ruling. Currently, we haven't gotten information on that yet. As the petitioners, we're still going through the tedious processes of understanding why the courts decided to deem the case inadmissible. And we're just trying to basically go through all of those processes, because law has quite intensive terms, but our lawyers are working quite closely with us, trying to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. But I'm definitely hoping that we will appeal the court case, because we can't let the kids of the world down like that.
That's great. I'm glad that we haven't given up. The struggle continues, and hopefully there'll be some good news on the horizon. I guess on a lighter note, you were one of the signatories in this case. Greta Thunberg, my understanding, she's also obviously one of the signatories, and I think as such you've almost been described as South Africa's Greta Thunberg. By any chance, have you met her? Have you spoken to her? What's your relationship like with her?
I actually don't like being called the South African Greta Thunberg, because I feel like we have very different contexts and we work on very different bases. I have a focus on the global south, being Afrocentric, because we are actively living through the climate crisis. And that's quite different from Greta, that comes from Sweden and has maybe the privilege, even though she's very aware and she wants today to be a specific spotlight on the global south. I don't like being described as her, because we are different. I mean, it's quite weird. We've been in the same space a couple of times, even at the World Economic Forum, but we've never actually had a conversation, talk to each other. We've been on this petition together. We've been on a couple of Zoom calls, but we never really had the one-on-one opportunity to engage. But yeah, I'm sure that will be resolved when we are at COP26. So definitely looking forward to that. Maybe we'll be able to liaise and strategize on how we really can get world leaders to pay attention to our struggles.
That'll be great. I mean, I think you can only be beneficial if you interact with her, but also I think you should tell her, that you are South Africa's Ayaka Melitaf, and we'll try and we're going to try and push your brand to be almost as big, your personal brand to be almost as big as hers, if not bigger. I think what you represent, as you mentioned, the real victims of climate change, you're really representing them well. So I hope we get your name out there. Great. And I think the last, sorry about that. And I think the last international foray that was really interesting that I saw is that you also went to Antarctica quite recently. What was that about?
Yes, I did. I entered a competition called Matrix in Antarctica. I believe the lines have closed for this year specifically, but it's a great initiative that takes South African kids to Antarctica to really see the effects on climate change on that continent, since we have such a close relationship to Antarctica, and it's time for the South African young people to start nurturing that relationship and seeing how much it can benefit us as the South African country. So through entering that competition, I was one of the 5 winners from around the provinces in South Africa, and got the chance to be going to Antarctica with a cohort of scientists, as well as Rian Mansa, which is like a world-renowned explorer. So it was quite the journey. I mean, it's weird to say that my biggest concern was the cold, that I'm going to get cold, I'm going to freeze. But then when I got there was like the least of my problems. The beauty was so enchanting. And there's so many different things that we did. It really showed us the beauty of like Antarctica, and the reason why we should be paying more attention to it, and the reason why we should be caring as South Africans. We even did a sub-zero dive in a nearby frozen over lake.
Wow.
Which is insane. But it was such an adrenaline rush, and I would not regret a single thing about doing that. It really showed me that you do live once, and you should take these experiences as they come. And you should definitely you shouldn't belittle yourself. You shouldn't tell yourself, oh, I could never do that, or I'm too small for that. Because really, if you don't knock on people's doors and if you don't engage in those opportunities, then definitely you're not going to get them.
That's fantastic. It's such a great life experience. I'm glad you had an opportunity to do that. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to get through the last few questions and we can open it up to Q&A. But just coming back to South Africa, COVID's obviously been a difficult time. Has it impacted your thinking on climate change? Are there any positive signs you've seen in the last few years?
Definitely when COVID struck, it was very debilitating, and it was heartbreaking because we saw how like the whole world was suffering through this kind of thing. But then at the same time, we saw how much the world could heal when people just took a step back and stayed in their homes, because we saw how much the ozone layer was regenerating. We saw how clearer the skies were getting. It really put in perspective that if we address the climate crisis as an emergency, the way we address the COVID-19 crisis, we can truly solve the climate crisis in the world. And it definitely changed my way of thinking, because it put into perspective that if push comes to shove and world leaders see the urgency of the climate crisis, it can be adequately addressed. We can't really have those questions of, oh, there's no way it can be addressed. We can't do that as the nation. COVID-19 made it very clear that when push comes to shove, we will be able to address it. But I don't want us to get to the point where we need to address it. We still have a little bit of time now, so we should act now on the climate crisis.
Definitely. I mean, there are obviously exceptions, but for the most part, I think I was also quite hopeful in seeing that large swathes of the population are able to cooperate in very complex ways in order to meet a singular goal. And as you say, hopefully you don't have to wait for it to be such an immediate emergency in the way COVID was. Moving on to the EU Climate Change Champions Project itself, you're familiar with it, and now we've been presented with what it's all about. What do you hope to see happen?
This is such a great initiative, honestly. Encouraging active citizenship from young people and people in society in general is definitely what we need, because the more society becomes conscious on the issues that are happening around them, the more we are urged to become active citizens. And we see that leading up to the elections right now, when young people aren't even aware of the elections, or they've told themselves immediately that I'm not going to take part. I think this initiative is quite great to conscientize the environment and the community and society at large about being active citizens and And if we can do that, and if this project can really start that innovative and start those processes and start those conversations, we will see a dramatic rise in young kids asking questions, in young kids addressing these difficult questions and having opinions on politics, having opinions on human rights, having opinions on everything that's happening around them. And truly, that is what we want for South Africa. We are a young population, yet we see that about 75% of youth are unemployed in our own country. That's insane. So I definitely think that by making sure that this project works and it works sufficiently, we'll see those gaps starting to get bridged and get smaller and smaller as this project introduces renewable energy, introduces other ways to engage in society, and it introduces other ways for you to actually get jobs, because the climate change sphere provides more than 1 million climate jobs. And if we get young people to understand the massive opportunity that it comes with, we'll be able to have more active citizens, and our society will start reaping the benefits of that.
100%. And I think if we just look at we can just see the power of an individual and how much you've personally done. And it's not just the awards you've gotten or the things that necessarily capture the headlines, but you seem to have committed your career to this. On a day-to-day basis, you're working in this space. So the idea of creating more people like you, 500 more people, say, for example, like you, it could really be game-changing in South Africa and even beyond. What do you think? Are there any other considerations in ensuring that this program is a success? Then we'll take it to some Q&A.
I definitely think that on expanding it, we really need to expand it to more than just South Africa. We need to expand it to Africa at large. We need to start removing the borders between countries in Africa and start addressing things as the African continent, as the global South. So if definitely this project could expand to that magnitude, I definitely believe that we'll start seeing big waves.
Fantastic. Great. So, and on that note, I've seen a couple of messages come through from my manager. Aman, where the hell are you? I've been trying to get hold of you. You're interviewing people again, aren't you? Call me when you can. So I think we'll just end it there. And Mary, perhaps you've been having a look at the questions that have been coming through, and we can share them with Ayaka.
Yes, great. Thanks so much, Aman and Ayaka. You definitely have a few new fans. So we see in the chat box, there's some requests for your social media handles, where to get the link to sign the petition. So for those people in the chat that ask those questions, we'll be emailing you directly. From a GreenCape point of view, obviously it's quite interesting to see your journey from, more initially the activism, the protesting, and now kind of moving more towards advocacy. So for us, that is, it's really all about what our project is about. It's empowering the youth, educating, capacitating them to be part of these conversations, so that they can be, take part in decision making and input on policy. So we definitely will be engaging with you throughout our project, and just, thank you very much for speaking today, and Aman also for hosting.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to be part of this launch. And I'm very, very excited to see the progress that can be made, especially in terms of capacitating young kids to actually take part in political standings and political opinions. Because currently at the AIDC, I'm part of the Youth Against the System group, which is a cohort of young kids that learn about the background of South Africa. We learn about political issues in the world and in the country specifically, and we learn about capitalism and the roots of these issues that we're facing, the system and all of that. And we need more young kids to be active in that space so that we can start asking those difficult questions. So I'm very, very happy to be part of this initiative, and definitely wish to be more involved in this GreenCape initiative.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ayaka, and all the best at COP.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, great. So, thank you, Aman. And now I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Jack Radmore. He is the Energy Program Manager at GreenCape, to close off our session.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Mary. And thank you to both of our fireside chat participants. I think just reading through the chat box during that time, words like inspirational, wow, bravo, just coming through over and over again, and really highlighting what is possible in terms of impact when our youth take on these challenges. And I think as this project, we're really excited to have some small role in trying to unlock more passion, more development, more growth, and more drive from the youth out there. And I think Aman mentioned that one word around engagement, and I want to add 3 more to that. And I think these are really the call to actions that come out of the back of these projects. It's engagement, it's collaboration, it's connection and partnership. Only when we're all playing our small role in a sort of active ecosystem are we really able to unlock and drive the space forward. So I do want to thank both of our participants there for the fireside chat, and I hope the inspiration that all of us are feeling now after that conversation lights a fire under each of us to drive the space forward. I know that we're running a little bit short on time. So with that, I'm going to hand back to Mary to wrap us up, and I hope everyone has a lovely day.
Great, thank you so much, Jack. And thanks once again, everybody, for attending. We appreciate your time that you've given up today to hear about our project. We as a GreenCape team are very, very excited. We start implementation early in the new year. So we're particularly excited to roll up our sleeves and get on the ground, as it's been a busy year with prepping the foundations with a number of our partners, collaborating partners. We will be working with on the ground, and we just want to say thank you to them, and we can't wait to get started. So please don't hesitate to contact Lindy or I. Our details are on the next slide, and we are also have just launched today our website. It is saclimatechamps.co.za. We posted that in the chat, so we will also be updating everybody on the developments of this project. Thank you once again to the GreenCape team, and all the best, everybody.
Thank you.